Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm Nancy Lamond with AARP, one of the underwriters, and we're very pleased to be here this afternoon for this session, Kickstarter and the Economics of Creativity. I'd like to introduce somebody who you probably all know, Walter Isaacson, our host of the Ideas Festival, who currently is the president and CEO of the Aspen Institute. In addition to many other things, he is a biographer of genius and creativity. His subjects have included Steve Jobs, Henry Kissinger, and Ben Franklin. For today's exchange, Walter is going to interview Perry Chen, founder and the CEO of Kickstarter, and recently named by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. Without saying anything more, I turn the platform over to Walter Isaacson and Perry Chen. Thank you.
Thank you. Perry, being one of the most influential, that's no big deal. He's actually one of the coolest people in the world, and that's a big deal. I've always enjoyed being with him. One source of his coolness, of course, is New Orleans, because that's where he got his kickstart, doing it mainly with music, right?
I'm born and raised in New York City, but I went to Tulane, and I stayed on in the city because I loved it. And I originally had the idea that became Kickstarter when I was living in the French Quarter, not far from, I know we talked about it, from Casamose, which is a place you used to hang out at. And it was late 01, early 02, and I was trying to throw a concert. I wasn't really a concert promoter, but I got it into my head, and I started to do the research. I got entrepreneurial, and I just realized I wasn't going to be able to put it together, and that the money was going to be the thing that was the barrier. And so it didn't happen. And it bothered me. It's like one of those things you experience where you hit a wall and you're just like, there should be a better way. There's got to be a better way. And as I remember it, they always say there's no light bulb in the bathtub moments, but I really remember kind of running down my staircase, going to see my roommate and being like, well, what if you could, on the web, and remember the web we're talking about is, 11 years ago or so, you could put up this project and say, put it to the people, say it to the audience that would have come. Hey, if we can raise $10,000 by May 1st, it'll happen, and if we don't, it doesn't. And they were never involved in this process. It was me, asking questions, looking at numbers, and I had to decide on my own. So I realized there was that inefficiency there.
Now, since I failed miserably at giving a good introduction, why don't you tell us exactly what Kickstarter does and how it works?
So let me ask you guys, how many of you guys know what Kickstarter is by a show of hands?
All right. So
okay, great. So I could start on second base.
Yes, right.
So very quickly, it's a funding platform for creative projects. So films, albums, theater, dance, design, technology, publishing. We have thousands and thousands of projects funding at any time. Right now, I think there's between 4,000 and 5,000 projects funding. And these are not projects that we go out and find. These are people, perhaps some of you, who come onto the site and they propose the projects that they want to do, and they send it out to their friends. If they have fans, their fans, and it kind of moves as things do now through the web, through social media, and people come in and look at these projects and say,
So you could just surf through things on Kickstarter, or, as happens about once every 7 hours, get an email from your daughter saying, Dad, go to Kickstarter and fund this thing. And you say, gee, I want to fund that.
Exactly. That's the power of social media.
And I think I looked it up. It's $650 to $700 million you've done.
Yes, so it's over $600 million now.
And in my mind, that might be now more than the federal government spent on the arts in a given year?
In the tallest midget competition, yes.
What's that?
In the sense of,
tallest midget, got it. The highest mountain in Louisiana competition.
Exactly.
No, but it's a big deal that we think the federal government, National Endowment for the Arts, all that sort of thing, and in some ways, either in your bathtub or running down the stairs, you've invented something that does what the NEA used to do and can't quite do now.
Yeah, I mean, I like government funding of the arts. I like more arts and music programs in schools. So in no way do we want or hope to be kind of competitive. Private funding of the arts is tremendous. Government pales in comparison. This is new because of the web, but this is also a bit old. I was showing you out in the hallway.
This is the most amazing thing. this ain't a new idea.
Right.
There's a long history of it.
Yep. So, we've been doing some research, and, we found a lot of real instances where people had funded projects, a larger audience had funded creative work, not just the Medici or the church coming in. So one great example was Alexander Pope, when he translated Iliad from Greek to English. He had 750 people subscribe to the work, and they got their names inscribed in the first edition. Mozart did this for a concerto. He had over 100 people support him. Actually, the first time he tried to fund it, he didn't raise the money, and then he went the next year and funded it. And then, of course, a more famous story, the Statue of Liberty, which, for the pedestal, they raised money from, I think, over 100,000 people.
So what makes it fundamentally different in the digital age?
It's exactly, that's it. It's the web. It's the ability for people, for anyone to see, for anybody to post a project, and then for anybody to see that. And then the social graph where I send it out to 100 people, and then they send it out to each 50 people, and so on and so on. And the speed of that transforms it completely.
Do you think this disintermediates things like music, movie, other studios?
Yeah, I mean, totally. And I think, it's literally what it's doing. And I think there's a balance. I think just in the same way we want governments to continue to fund arts, I don't think we're advocating for the shutting down of the creative industry. But I think...
I see Michael Eisner there. I'm going to get him to respond in a minute, so be thinking of your response there, Michael.
Yeah, I think that hopefully we can push the industry to kind of maybe offer some of the things that creators are able to get using a model like Kickstarter that they haven't been able to get from the industry.
Do you worry at times, there's been a slight either controversy, but everything on the web is ginned up as a controversy, that stars and celebrities hijack Kickstarter sometimes?
Not at all. I think that this past year we've had a few celebs use the site, and some of them have succeeded, and actually some of them have failed.
Give me an example.
I think the big one that people were talking about was the actor Zach Braff raised millions of dollars for a film he wants to produce. And I don't want to name the people who failed, but it's Googleable. But I think there was that question, which is just, I think we have the suspicion that we live in a zero-sum game, that everything is so competitive. If somebody's winning, we're losing. And when the celebs or the industry comes in, it's almost like, well, we had our moment, but now these guys are going to come in and take it. And that's not what we're seeing. When these bigger names are coming in, we're seeing a tremendous amount of people introduced to the service for the first time. And then they're going and looking at other film projects, or they're looking at other projects in their city. So we've actually found a kind of a rising tide effect.
And is this, it started off, as you said, with a music idea, been in the arts. What other fields has it expanded to, and would you like it to expand to?
When we started, we were like, we wanted to focus on what we were going to call creative projects. And we've stayed, pretty consistently on that path. So music and film and dance and some, we think of the bigger umbrella. So in today's world, video games certainly falls underneath that. A lot of technology and design to us falls underneath that. And we think that's a really, really big world. But we don't do everything, we don't do charity. We don't do kind of traditional business startup funding. Although you see young...
But you're friends with the guy we had, Charles, Donors Choose, right?
Charles Best, yeah, he's great. And they've been around, they've been up and
too.
running longer than we have and doing tremendous things for public schools.
But do you see any sort of just sympathy there, or the way you do things together?
Yeah, it's... because we don't serve that area, I wouldn't want that area not to be served. Mm-hmm. So I'm thrilled that those guys are doing a great job at it.
What about entrepreneurship? People want to start businesses that may be under the creative umbrella, but may not be. May just be somebody wants a taxi cab app for compete with Uber.
We've tried to find the line. I think that the more creative arts patronage has this long history that we've learned from, and we've seen that the relationship between people who are supporting those works is something that exists and is known. I think with this newer stuff, it's 3-4 years old. So we've created some new guidelines for things like product design to make sure that people have, a working prototype or that they're showing the actual image, not some computer rendering. to try to figure out the right balance. But you're right, entrepreneurs often use Kickstarter, to maybe do their first product, but it's, we make it fit under the project scope. So they're not funding their company, they're trying to fund this one project. Yeah.
You just said something very interesting, which is, in a sense, you curate things pretty carefully. Make sure the image is exactly right, make sure...
I wouldn't use the word curate. Basically on our site, like all sites, we have a set of guidelines. And that's basically what we have. We have a team of people that review the projects as they come in, just to see if they fit our guidelines. And that's basically how we put things into, sure, come along, or, we're sorry, it doesn't fit our guidelines. But there's no aesthetic curation. We're not saying, oh, we don't like the music, or it's not a good idea.
But unlike on YouTube or many other big social media sites, you can't just put something up automatically. You've got to
Correct.
go through a process.
Yes, yeah, I think that's, for us, we would love to do that, but we found that if you just let people put things up, nobody cares about your rules. Nobody wants to read your rules. We found it was better to look at it before, then if people put it up, then have to kind of take things down, which we felt was a bit more violent.
Right, and it does get to the whole sort of user-generated and social media web, which is how much should we be wanting there to be filters, editors, people who certify things?
Yeah.
How do you draw that line?
I think I would think about it as governance. Governance, and in the sense like personality, right? Kickstarter is a platform for funding creative projects. That's our identity. That was the original idea. That's how me and my co-founders came together. That's how we built our team on this. This is our mission. And so I think that even if people want us to be other things, I think we have our own mission, and we're staying that course. I think governance is key for every user-generated website. It must be there. Sites like Wikipedia have found a way to have this kind of body of core members that act as the governance. Most other sites have their internal teams, but it's potentially becoming the most important layer of the web as technology. It's not like new chips anymore. It's not about the speed. Now it's about the identity, the personality of the company. Of course, what you do, but then also how you govern and how you regulate your community and ecosystem.
But you've thought through governance better than almost anybody other than, say, Wikipedia, where there's more governance discussions going on Wikipedia than in Washington, alas. The rest of the web seems to be foundering at what are the rules of the road, what are the governance, how do we decide, whether it be Twitter, YouTube, whatever. How do you see that evolving? Are you helping set the pace?
A lot of different challenges. I think that a lot of the services have enough uniqueness that where the governance changes. So to take, for example, where we just talked about, curating or filtering before versus after. I think that if it's just a tweet or if it's just an image or a video, if it comes down after an hour, a week, it's less, it's not that big of a thing. But if we let a Kickstarter project go up and somebody raises money and then we have to take that down, that's a bigger thing. So we've actually had to face more unique things because money is being transferred to deal with that kind of stuff. Web-wide, I think that's really interesting. I think a lot of, you see it all over the place, right, with what Facebook had to deal with recently with, where's the line for them and user-generated content. I think people are now saying we spend so much of our lives using these services. We have tremendous affinity for these services. We want them to be well-governed, just like we want our communities to be well-governed.
Do you have moral or values guidelines? Like if somebody says, I want to make a film that's anti-black or anti-Semitic, you say no thank you?
Yeah, of course. There are clear lines of things that are objectionable, offensive, yes.
And but they aren't that clear in the real world.
Well, no. I think there are gray areas. Sometimes the cases are clear.
What if somebody wanted to make a pro-gun film?
Well, I would say, we actually don't allow awareness films and political issue films. Obviously,
Why?
Documentaries often get into that. So that's, but we're trying to stay with this, this creative project focus. So, just because the medium is film or video, it doesn't mean that everything in film and video is allowed. So, docs, of course, feature films, shorts, etc. But when it's getting into being a commercial, an awareness, an advocacy thing, it's something we stay away from. Of course, it's challenging when it's a documentary sometimes. And then, the team will...
Give me a good example of where y'all had to wrestle morally.
Challenging. Let's see. I think that recently there was a project. So in many ways, let me preface this. In many ways, we're dealing with kind of the future, right? People are putting up new ideas on Kickstarter. Somebody put up a project to create a genetically modified plant that would glow in the dark. Times did a big story on it. Mm-hmm. When you look at it at first glance, you're like, this is really fascinating. But, a lot of people started to say, hey, this is a new genetically modified organism being done in a private laboratory. The thing is that the backers of the project, some of them were being offered seeds. And so this was a case of, hey, if this is being used as a distribution mechanism for new genetically modified seeds, and they're being distributed to the public, meaning where could that go? Is this an area that, first of all, nobody is regulating, but that this is happening now on Kickstarter? Is this something where we need to step in and think about that, because we're on this bleeding edge sometimes? So that's a conversation right now that we've been talking a lot about.
And so you haven't yet decided on that one?
No, but
and do you have like a committee of elders or Chen strokers?
I mean, we take this stuff really seriously. So the community team will talk about it. In cases like this, the founders and the executive team will talk about it. We'll also go outside and we'll talk to people. In this case, I know we've talked to people in the science community.
We have Eric Lander here, I think, somewhere, who runs the Genome Project. You can make him answer that, because he's also an ethicist as well as a DNA specialist. Once something gets approved, or it's like an app making it through the App Store, let us say, how does it rise to the top? Is that then a crowd-sourced phenomenon?
Yeah, generally, and like the App Store, most of these projects get approved.
Right, that's why I want to dwell.
It's a couple ways. Like, we tell everybody the first thing you should do is, email your friends, your mailing list. I mean, everybody knows how to share their stuff these days, and that's they're pushing the boat out into the water. And what they're hoping for is that first generation of people are quickly going to be like, I want to support this, or I think this is compelling enough to share, or hopefully both. And then we also have people who come to Kickstarter now as we've grown, and they look through and they're looking at areas of interest, or projects that we've featured in our newsletter or things like that. But once something of interesting gets out into the web, it just takes a life of its own. Mm-hmm. Blogs write about it, because blogs are looking to write 50 stories a day. So these things things just shoot out there.
Have you built on more of a social media component so that you're almost like a Facebook for people who want to share these things, or do you allow that to happen more on Facebook, Twitter, and others?
Yeah, I think we basically mostly we have a feature where you can follow your friends on Kickstarter if you want to get alerted to when they backed a project. But generally the social networks do a phenomenal job. I mean, as we sit here, the connections grow. Right. So in effect, you're going to be hard pressed to create a better infrastructure than the one that email, Twitter, Facebook are providing.
You started this as a way to have people find funding for creative projects. Mm-hmm. Has it grown to something larger in concept, almost a new way of using the web? Or do you just want to keep it focused as what it is?
I think it certainly has. I think one of the biggest things is that a community is being created around each project.
That's interesting.
And that's the thing that a lot of creators come to us and say, obviously I came here for the funding, but what I did not realize is that these 80, these 500, these 5,000 people are now this community that is centered around my project, that are looking forward to my progress. And I think, as a lot of people here know, it's classically you kind of work in the dark. you do your thing, you write your book, and you have your small group that you share with, but then there's the reveal.
Right.
And this is almost pulling people in very early on. And these people, they're not consumers, they're your patrons. So they're not looking to be like, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. They're rooting for this. And, I'm sure, if you could think back to when you were coming up, that's wind at your sails. That's really important stuff, not to be in this vacuum being like, who cares, who's gonna care about this when I...
Do the funders, though, sometimes become collaborators, either for good or for bad?
We hear stories of, hey, somebody writes in, they're like, I'm a set designer, I saw you're gonna be in town, I could help you. But in general, I think people, and it's something we thought about very early on, because we did not want Kickstarter to be crowdsourcing the work.
Right.
I think artists and creative people, it's about them presenting their vision and the audience saying, we want to support you in bringing this vision to life. In many ways, we wanted to make sure that we went so far beyond the way that industry traditionally treats this process, which is, I like it, but maybe if it was a romantic comedy.
Yeah,
and
right.
I know it's easy to take a shot at that. And it's because the motivations are more about bringing something to market that's going to be profitable. And I think here, people just want to see this thing that they're behind coming to life. So, I think people have really respected that, and we don't see people trying to be like, do this, do that, do this, do that. And I think that's really important.
That's actually a good segue to put Michael. Is Michael still there? Yeah, on the spot. Because that's what you did for a living, which is say, yes, but it should be a romantic comedy. Give notes. Help build something up. Tell us your thoughts now that both with your new company and with Disney, you see this change. Can we give Eisner a microphone? Or stand up and somebody will run you one? Yeah. Yep.
I think it's complicated, and I think it's only positive. I don't think it hurts the creative process in the traditional movie, television, publishing business. I think if anything, it helps it. There are two ways that traditional projects are created. One is a way that I don't like, but it's the packaging way. Very successful. You take a hot actor, a hot director, hot writer, and you package it. And that's a lot of the big movies you see in the summer are created that way. Another way is you take a strong idea. Let's do a book on Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs says, hey, Walter Isaacson's the guy I want. And you get a different way of creating a project. The other way is from the ground up, which is what I spend my life doing, which is somebody's walking down the street with you and he says, how about a movie about disco dancing? Or you read something in New York Magazine and there's an article on it. They come out of everywhere. They come out of your own head. They come out of people you're associated with. So if you're looking at Kickstarter and there is a place where intelligent people are creating ideas, if you're any good in the traditional movie or television publishing business, that's a source of creativity. So I would see no problem. I don't think it's any negative. Now, there could be a negative in the legal world. I'm trying to think how that works because every movie I've ever made with no outside influence other than the people inside, we've been sued by 30 people who said it was their idea. And by the way, there were 30 people around the world who decided a movie about high school singing like Grease was their idea. And it's even possible they wrote their grandmother. Hey, wouldn't it be great to do a movie about maybe even starring John Travolta? And what happens is you have a plethora of lawsuits. Now you have a situation I can imagine where there are 100 television shows or movies or books being discussed in Kickstarter. And irrespective of that, not even knowing that, you do a movie, television show, a book that is in the same general arena. And I now see an operation and an opportunity for lawyers to have a really good profession. Because whose idea is it? An intellectual ideas are very hard to define, and who's thought of them. Other than that, and I don't know whether that's happened yet.
It's, not, I mean, we've funded over 10,000 films, so far we haven't heard about any of those incidences.
Then they have to
Are
get,
people-
they should get
Knock on
lawyers
wood.
because they can make a fortune.
Are people ever shy away because they have a great idea and they're scared to put it on Kickstarter because they think somebody else might take it?
I think earlier on we got those. We got, the emails being, I want to put my thing up, but I want to talk to you guys first. Will you sign this NDA?
Yeah.
And we're just like, if you're not ready for the public to see this, it's probably not the right medium for you. But I think people have kind of adapted as they've seen it take off. And just one point, I think the underlying thing is the different models between the two businesses. In a way, I think, I don't believe that people in the film or music industry per se are trying to say I'm more creative than the creatives, and I think it should go this way. I think it's that the outcome needs to be profitable, and the backers of Kickstarter projects know from the outset that they have no ownership interest, that this could become a big hit or it could be a flop, and that's not what they're judging it on. And that's honestly core to why this works, is that because the overwhelming majority of ideas will not make money, maybe don't even have any clue about how to make money or don't want to make money. And in the traditional systems, those ideas can't really get through or need to be changed. And here, since the outcome is not about making money and nobody along the way that's putting in money is expecting that, that tension is taken away.
But why? What do people get for funding a project on Kickstarter?
I think I would ask you that. I mean, if you've been a backer too, I think, it varies. Sometimes you're supporting a friend. Sometimes you're supporting someone who you've been a fan of for a while. Sometimes I think often it's just like, that's really cool. I want to see that exist in the world.
So it's basically altruistic and philanthropic in a way.
I think it's a balance. I think there's a real mix. I think as a model, it's different from investment, philanthropy, and commerce. But like all those models, there's times where there's qualities that many of them share. So I think there is a kind of warm glow thing that investors and philanthropists have when they give money. I think people also, all these projects have to offer rewards, a copy of the film, come to the screening.
I have more gimme caps or T-shirts than I need from these things. But
so there's a mix of those things that kind of create sufficient or abundant value to where backers are like, totally.
Would you put your foot, or would you try to stop it if instead of sending me a signed copy of the script or a T-shirt that makes me feel good, somebody went on Kickstarter and said, and if you do it, you get 1% of the gross?
Yeah, we don't allow it, and it's just not our bag, I think that removes the thing that is the most amazing part to us, which is all of those ideas that before were not being well served by the other model, the investment model. We don't want people looking at these projects and thinking, is this thing going to make money? We want people, that bar is really high, and we want people looking at these projects and be like, I like these people, I like their idea, I want to help make this happen. And that's where we focus. And I think other people will experiment in those other areas, and we watch from the sidelines.
Have you seen people start experimenting in the area of doing a Kickstarter that's not quite as altruistic, but that would be for crowdsourcing real investment?
The Jobs Act was passed, I think, maybe now a little over a year ago, which was the first step in
you could explain, or I will. The law allowed very small investors to invest in startups without going through all the SEC and Dodd-Frank requirements. And people sometimes said it was to help things like Kickstarter, meaning if you wanted to invest in a film on Kickstarter, you could be an investor. But of course, you all said no, because that's how it Kickstarter.
It was actually a really interesting time for us because we were being used as the example of why the legislation should happen, and we kind of just were never involved, and we didn't say anything. And then after it was passed, everybody's first question was, when are you going to launch this? And we were like, actually, this is not our intent, and we're not really interested in this. I think it's still stuck. It's not, the SEC is going to weigh in on it. I honestly don't know what's going to happen. As a spectator, I don't know how it's going to play out.
And if the SEC says, yeah, you can invest in these things online, crowdsourced, and get an equity stake, would you see that as a threat to Kickstarter? Would you go into that field, or would you just be a spectator?
Yeah, we're definitely not going into that. I mean, we have so much on our plate in this area that, and it's just, we think spiritually different from where we come from. I don't think we look at a lot of this landscape as competitive. This stuff is so emergent. I think that in many ways we're looking at a lot of this stuff as, interested in the emergent behavior that surrounds this kind of stuff. In many ways we're like at the forefront of a new model being really engaged with in a mass way. And so, that's why we're very public with our stats. Even as a private company, you can go on Kickstarter. You go to our stats page, and we put up a tremendous amount of transparent information because we think it's important.
But do you reveal the names of the donors to each project?
Yeah,
or can I do it anonymously?
Yeah, you could type in anonymous, not Walter Isaacson.
Yeah, right. My last question before we go to the audience: name one or two really cool projects or things that most amazed you.
Sure. So, my bias is definitely towards the arts. So there was one project by these two artists to write a handwritten letter to everybody in the world. But on Kickstarter, they only wanted to do it for one town. And they had done it twice before. They're called Mysterious Letters. You can Google it. There's some amazing stuff. They go to a town, the two of them. They write a handwritten letter to about the 1,000 citizens, and then they mail them, and then they leave, and they've never engaged with them. And people get them all on the same day. And they walk around to their neighbor and they're like, who, what? Woo! Exactly. So it's beautiful, it's whimsical. Who in the world other than backers on Kickstarter would ever have funded this? It's perfect. And then there's a great New Orleans one, which is a few blocks from my house in the Bywater, which was this musical houses project where an old house, I think, mid-early 1800s house, had fallen down. And this artist, Swoon from New York and New Orleans artist, put these houses together into 5 structures they created musical houses. And then people would play the houses for performances. And it was incredible.
That one I know and loved. Open it up. Questions, please. Down here. You can shout or you can wait for our intrepid runners. Identify yourself if you would. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, thank you. My name is Nat Wong. I came from Tokyo. I have actually a crowdfunding platform called Aikifu that supports charities in Japan. And I was wondering, actually, you said that you were not supporting charities, but could you tell us why you never went into that direction, and if you're planning to go there in some future?
And compete in Japan again.
And if so, are you
Don't
going
go
to
to
Japan?
And can you tell us a bit about the first project that went on the platform and how it started with the project?
Sure. I'll answer the charity question. It's the reason we don't support charity projects on Kickstarter is simply because we wanted to focus on creative works, and we think that creativity deserves its own space. And I think over the course of time on the web, I think probably charitable and political fundraising has there's been great impact in that area, like Charles Best and Donors Choose. So we felt that area was going to be served, and it was going to continue to be served better. And then we just felt that you just can't necessarily mix everything. If I'm an artist and I'm putting my film up there, and other projects on the site are about causes and more dire things, I think there's a trivialization of creative work. And we wanted to say we believe creativity and artists should have their own space, and we believe that other platforms like yours will grow and will serve the need of the charity community.
A quick follow-up. You have a very good technological platform. Could you ever see licensing it to other groups that want to do something totally different from you, such as charitable?
How hard was it to build?
Well, actually, we're planning to do that, but are you planning to do that?
No, I mean, I think. You know what? I think I've heard maybe in South America there's an open source version. Our developers and our product people and our design team they're incredible. They're some of the best in the business. Underlying this, I don't think when people are trying to put these platforms together, that is always the biggest barrier. And I think potentially some people are already doing this. So that's why I think it comes back to governance. It's not just the technology anymore. Somebody can build a social network in a weekend now, but it's really the people on the platform and the governance of the platform and the identity saying.
You can't license that out.
Yeah, you can't.
Yes, sir. Both of you, I'll go we'll go one at a time.
Since you're not supporting charities, my question is, are you a .org or a .com? And if not not-for-profit, what's your revenue model?
So we're a .com, Kickstarter.com, and we're a for-profit company. We have a single revenue stream, which is that if projects are successfully funded, meaning they reach the goal or more that the creator set out to raise, we take 5%. If the project is not successfully funded, there are no fees at all, and that's the entirety of it. We don't do any advertising. We won't do any advertising. We keep it nice and simple.
Good, smart. Yes, sorry?
Are you profitable, was my follow-up.
Yeah. We're profitable. We're not crazy internet profitable, but we're
It's perfect. Good job.
Human profitable.
You and Alexander Pope, yeah.
A couple of practical questions. Of your $600 million, what tends to be the average size of a contribution? And second, how do you authenticate proposals such that they're not having supporters taken advantage of by someone who wants to take the money and run?
Sure.
And finally, what happens when a project doesn't reach the required level of funding? What happens to the money that has been contributed?
Sure. I'll try to remember those. I'll go backward. If projects are not fully funded when the time ends, then the creator sets the duration. Usually it's 30 days. None of the backers' credit cards are charged. They haven't been charged up until that point. So it's a real no harm, no foul situation. How do we protect people who support projects? The model does a tremendous amount of protection. I think in traditional P2P commerce, eBay is one example. It's a one-to-one system often, so it's a one seller and one buyer. And when eBay had problems many years ago, it was because you could put something up, and as long as there was one sucker out there, which I have to admit, I think once I was, you kind of win. And when you're putting a project up and you need dozens, hundreds, or thousands of people to support it, it is exponentially more difficult because, and in today's day and age where people are like, who is this guy? So we've really found, this was the thesis at the beginning, but we've really found it to be true that the crowd itself really kind of is a huge factor in making sure that the people behind these projects are legitimate.
Yeah, well, I'll move around. Yes, in the middle there. I think to your right is the microphone.
Thank you. You mentioned that Kickstarter is not meant to start companies and it's project-based, but my question is, in some of these projects, since they're raising funds and people who are raising them don't have any legal business structure, are some people by default creating a business? And are there any legal implications for that, or do you see any challenges? Because I've started a Kickstarter myself, and I remember the options were sole proprietorship, general partnership, and it seems like some people's instinct would be to go out and create one if they were working with other people.
Yeah, I mean, I think I believe the options are, it's not, basically, people start projects as individuals, which is the most common, and then people might have an LLC or some other structure. It's honestly been going on in the creative community for a very long time. I mean, almost every film is the first, one of the first things is it's an LLC. So it's not kind of new behavior. The money goes directly from the backers to the creator, so to the individual or, sometimes to the company. And that's all, pretty clear where the money's going when people check out. So, I think it's something that just generally exists. We haven't seen any new challenges faced with that.
Yes, right. Yeah. The people who, okay, you'll get to go next.
Hi, I have a double question. One is for you and one is for the ethicist. I wonder if it's appropriate for him to respond to the issue about the seeds that will make plants grow. And then I would like to know if this incident has changed the way you curate, and I'll use that word loosely, the things that the donors will get from the product manager.
Yeah, Eric is speaking in the big music tent in about an hour. So Eric Lander, who's the great geneticist. So we'll just turn it to
I think
Eric.
this is exactly what we're trying to deal with now. We're looking at this new emerging use, and we're talking to people. And I'll talk to Eric? I'll talk to Eric this week, and we're going to try to figure out if this is something that is that we would create a new guideline around. It's especially interesting because there's nothing to necessarily lean on. This is not an issue that we've seen any other site deal with. We haven't seen that the government or come into this area, so it's one of those really interesting ones where it's so emerging that we're stepping back and we're really going to do our due diligence before we, make any decisions.
It's good that you're a moral guy, by the way. Yes.
I'm Trey. As people use Kickstarter differently and Kickstarter evolves to meet those new behaviors, what improvements would you like to make in the short term, and what challenges would you like to tackle in the long term?
Great question. First off, we love that people use it differently. I mean, we kind of, in some ways, see it as a medium. I mean, some of the most interesting projects I've seen is ways where they're not just, backers will not just get a copy of the film or go to the screening, but they're bringing their backers in. They're saying, well, I need 100 people to do this thing, so the backers who come in will all get to join us on this day or something. And I think that's really interesting. Bringing people in closer. What was the other?
So, what would you like to?
What would we like to work on?
Yeah.
I think that we are defining this experience. There's the model itself, and the model is working well. But we're defining this experience of what it is when any of you go on and you back a project or you create a project. Obviously, the creator is the biggest factor in whether the experience for backers is good. But we have so much we can do to help bridge that gap. The tools they use to send out the updates from what the latest stuff is going on. The tools we give them to help them along the way as they're creating their project, as they're they're delivering their rewards. So shaping those experiences, and tools is just one part of it, but just this is a new phenomenon. People connecting this way around a creative work on the web, and that's the most exciting part for us. Is how do we make this experience even better for the creators and the backers? And I think that's what gets us up in the morning.
Yeah, there and then there. Yeah.
Excuse me, hi. So I guess you would kind of define yourself as an artist, correct, or not, or entrepreneur
An
artist?
impresario.
I know. Well, there's kind of an interesting trend in art that I went to RISD, so I'm a designer, artist. My brother's an artist, and my mom's mom is an artist, et cetera, et cetera. But looking at new trends in art, where if you look at the new museum over in New York, which opened up 5 years ago, it was the artist's statement was more about the community and curation, and I really kind of feel like Kickstarter is actually doing the next step for an artist / entrepreneur. And I was at an IDEO, and this conference has been amazing, by the way. And I was at an IDEO kind of workshop yesterday, and they're talking about how to create jobs. It didn't matter what kind of job. And it's important to create jobs because if you look at the millennials, they're hipsters, they don't know what they're doing, they're just narcissistic. I mean, how do you activate that generation? And I feel like creating projects like you're doing, which are amazing. Do you think that the next step in Kickstarter is trying to activate them, or how do you bridge that gap?
I'd like to think it's happening. I mean, I think that certainly on a lot of these projects, there are jobs, whether they're part-time or not, being created around the production.
It's like the eBay economy. We now have a Kickstarter economy.
Yeah, I mean, this is money that is kind of being disintermediated, so there's less of a structure in the middle that's pulling out a tremendous amount of it. And then if I got 70 grand to make my film, well, there's a bunch of people I'm going to be calling up the next day to work on it. So I think that is extremely exciting, and I think we see that happening.
Okay,
Sorry, I have
you're
the
next,
microphone.
and then here.
2 questions. I'd like to know the youngest age of your creator that you funded. And the second is, I have to admit, I've never been on the site, but I'm going back to do it. Is there a strand on your platform that encourages teachers to help their young students pursue a project that they have shared in their classrooms or elsewhere?
If you're under 18, you have to start a project with a parent or guardian. And so we've certainly had young people. I remember one album by a 12-year-old, but I wouldn't want to say that he was the youngest. I think we had a class of students doing some technology project where they sent something into space. I believe that was with their teacher. Hopefully it was with their teacher. He's like, I was out yesterday. What did you do with the sub? They're like, well, we sent something into space.
We have Richard Branson coming day after tomorrow. He can be your ethicist on sending people to space.
I have to take a moment to say I don't think the millennial generation is narcissistic at all. And I've been on panels, I mean, not on them, at panels at this conference saying the opposite. So my question is, I'm Janae from Seattle. Have you seen traditional funding for the arts, foundations, government, the NEA? Are they coming to you? Are they asking you questions like, how can we do better at what we do? You don't have to submit a big social impact statement to Kickstarter to get this funding. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked with the NEA. My co-founder Yancey went down to DC and he hung out with them, and we've got a great relationship with them. We really support, what each other are doing. I think we have the same mission, which is more creative works. Neither side see, it as competitive, and so I think we've seen a lot of interest from foundations, from institutions about what we're doing. And I think there's a lot of, just like with all of the social media, there's a lot of looking at it and being like, should we engage with that? Should we not? Should we do our own thing or whatever? I think it's early days. I really do. I think oftentimes we're serving the same artists. There's certainly artists that use Kickstarter that have received grants and that may continue to apply for grants from some of these. So, I think it's generally been pretty symbiotic. And I hope it continues that way.
Mm-hmm. Is that way? Yeah, in the back there. I've been ignoring the back too much.
Since being here, I'm totally struck by the amazing scientific projects that are so dependent on private funding. The future of our country doesn't happen unless this occurs. For example, the Large Telescope. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of it. Do you consider they are creative projects, and is there any scope for people to help fund those kind of really cutting-edge projects that may just not happen otherwise?
Yeah, I think we've mostly dealt in the world of technology, which is what the telescope fell under. I think.
I'm sorry, the telescope was on Kickstarter?
There was a telescope on Kickstarter, and it's done extremely well. And so, I think technology has been an area where we've really seen kind of very interesting stuff, robotics, telescopes, things of that nature. The sciences that go beyond that, in a sense, this plant project was an interesting one that, shows the challenges of delving into an area like that, which, we do feel falls outside of our core scope of creative projects. But like you say, I mean, we are, of course, interested as citizens of the world in how things can progress. So, it's not something that's within our scope today. And, I'm not really sure, but I think that we're excited about the impact we're able to make on that side with the areas that we do to support, like technology.
Mm-hmm.
When you were setting it up, did you have issues around potential regulations, interstate commerce, things of that nature?
We never did. I think from the beginning, we made it extremely clear that there was no ownership being transferred at all. There was no upside for backers, regardless of whether this was a #1 hit or made $0. So we haven't had any trouble with any regulators. And that's something, a line we continue to make very clear to all parties involved.
So, hi, I'm Hannah. A week or two ago, Kickstarter faced a really interesting moral quandary, which is a guy who published his seduction technique, and lots of people thought it was completely legit, and other people thought it was totally offensive, and you guys ended up falling on the side of the totally offensive. And so I'm wondering how you made the decision, basically, that was out of your bounds.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was another case, where where in these user-generated communities, governance is a huge part of it. And I think, from time to time, we have to deal with these cases where, we're being asked to kind of judge whether something is over the line. And in this case, we ended up saying that yes, it was. And we take this stuff extremely seriously, especially when dealing with creative work and the arts at our core. We bias very much away from anything that would be perceived as censorship. So this was a particular case where, when we stepped back, we did think it was over the line. But I think it's the nature of everybody who's doing work in the user-generated space for you to have to, from time to time, really look at where you draw the line.
I'm going to use the, right there? Okay, last question. Yeah, I'm sorry, I think I'll have to be, all right, you get it too. We'll do 2 last questions. Yeah.
Billy Wiseman, and I'm a philanthropreneur who's interested in mixing philanthropic and business models. And the question that this gentleman over here, one of them, or someplace it came from, is the average size of the transaction and what are the taxable ramifications of it. If these are, because we bounce back and forth between investment or grants, are they grants or are they investments? Yeah. How do you handle the?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely not investment. So we make pretty clear. It does remind me, that was the part of your question that I did miss. When somebody's backing a project, I believe the average pledge it's fluctuated, but it's probably around $70 or so. But when I back projects, sometimes because I'm backing so many, it's $1 or $5 here or there, or if I really want one of the rewards, it's what that is. And actually that's a really important part of it, which is just, I think people always feel like I don't want to give $1, but like the creators, they get an email, they say you have a new backer, it's the best thing that's happening to them at that time, and that vote of confidence is massive. So if you guys are ever on a project and you're like, I don't want to just give $1 or $5 or whatever, please go ahead. They love it. And for the tax side, I think that each project is different depending on the rewards they're offering, and so we have some tax guidelines on the site, but generally projects are different enough to where they're going to have to talk to their own tax advisor to figure that exactly out.
So today we've explored your business model briefly, a lack of advertising. We've touched on morals, ethics. And to me, behind all those ideas, it seems that authenticity is very important to you and Kickstarter. So my question is, how do you maintain your authenticity to your users in the future?
I mean, authenticity it's so funny because I feel like authenticity was a word and then it became like a marketing tactic. I think we're just people. We're 60 people who run a website, and it's a train that's moving 1,000 miles an hour, and we do our best to, represent our values and the values that we've put out there, and that's honestly the best we can do, and I think that's it. So we're not thinking about being authentic. I think we're just trying to do the best job that we can.
Wow. To help answer that question, y'all are in Brooklyn, right? Are you moving to Manhattan?
So we're in Manhattan, and we're moving to Greenpoint in a few months, yeah.
But it is 60 really cool people, and the other part of your authenticity question that I feel about Kickstarter is it's very transparent. Y'all are honest and open. One last question, if I may have the prerogative. which is in doing this, you've removed sort of the gatekeeper, whether it's Simon & Schuster giving me the advance or Disney sort of paying for a project. How does that change art in the long run? All of a sudden, it's kind of kookier project.
It's more. It's just more. And that's the goal. It's just more. More things.
Yeah, but the letter writing to the small town, the music houses in New Orleans, it seems like there's a different type of art.
You know, this stuff has always been out there. People have been trying to get grants, find ways to get this stuff done. And a lot of it may not happen. And so that's why I say more. It's just that the ideas exist, the desire exists. Oftentimes, the funding is the greatest barrier, and then we found that the community part, adding that, is an accelerant about a wind at the sails of the creators. So it's just about more, and that's why we are in league with foundations and the government and schools and everybody who's pushing more creative works out there. We don't think about this as competitive. We just want more creative works out there.
Perry, every now and then we get to meet somebody who's made the world a better place. You have.
Thanks.
Thanks. Pretty good. Pretty good.